RFID is proven to deliver the accuracy levels needed to perfect BOPIS. And here to tell us how you can do it in your stores is Dean Frew. As I said, Dean is the Chief Technology Officer and Senior VP for RFID Solutions at the SML Group. Dean?
Great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your partnership throughout the years and the platform to be able to talk about this important subject. So thank you all for joining. We've got folks on from Eastern Europe all the way through Asia. And today's topic, we're going to walk through a bunch of case studies and experience. A lot of the activity that I'm going to talk about today has taken place since stores have started to open up again. And I'll be highlighting that as we go through. I'm going to walk through basically the problem as we've seen it with retailers, the solutions and the benefits that come out the other side, and I welcome your questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you. So as a basis for these case studies, I want to share a little bit about who we are. So first, we have two major parts of our business that touch BOPIS 2.0. One is the RFID tags. We encoded over 2 billion of them last year. We'll see growth again this year for those encoded tags for a number of different vertical markets in retail: apparel, footwear, home goods, cosmetics, electronics, and sporting goods. We have 24 service bureaus around the world, which is close to, as we say, close to the needle, close to the garment factory, which enables us a distinct advantage or a distinct value proposition for brand owners around the world that are needing to put tags on product, which is the headwaters of any item level system. And then we're also a leading software solution provider. We have close to 4,000 stores live and that are using our Clarity software for both inventory management, but also what's emerging is the item level systems are being used to drive retail operations inside stores. And we have a good book of business yet to be deployed, which is over 3,000 stores. Most of our retailers are between 100 stores and 5,000 stores within their chain, so a huge spectrum. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's not just apparel and footwear anymore. We're seeing item level technology being applied across a spectrum of these 6 different verticals inside retail. Clearly, apparel and footwear is out in front, but we are seeing application for the technology throughout the different verticals in retail. So now let's talk a little bit about experience. So over 200 million unique RFID tags are read in stock counts around the globe every week on Clarity. And what that's doing is it's giving us a significant experience base to look at how the benefits are being created. And specifically, as stores came out of COVID shutdowns, watching how they were able to leverage that technology to drive both inventory and operational efficiencies in their stores. And since the stores have opened up again, our customers have performed over 80,000 stock counts, and we've supported over thousands of different BOPIS orders in the store. And retailers are finding that there's a really strong ROI, and you can see why, I hope, after we walk through some of these case studies. SML brings a unique capability to the table, and that is what we call total care. And RFID total care is the ability to bring the entire system together to drive value. And that's essential as we start looking at the problems that retailers are facing and how to solve them. And so let's dive into those problems now. So inside retailers today, buy online, pick up in store, click and collect, buy online, ship from store, whatever version a retailer is going through, efficiency of those processes and those work streams inside a store depend on high inventory accuracy. BOPIS 1.0, as we call it, is what's being used largely today is SKU-based. It's being based on an inventory that was taken with somebody walking around with a handheld once a year and doing a SKU count. Maybe they do receiving at the back of the store at the piece level for sampling, but not for every product that's coming through the door for receiving. The challenge with this is, of course, that the SKU-based inventory accuracy is at best around 70%. We've seen a few retailers that have gone above that, but the vast majority of retailers that we have deployed pilots and done experiments with, et cetera, using the technology and built business cases around, 95% of them are less than 70% accurate. And I'll walk through some of those in a second. And the problem is that BOPIS 1.0, or SKU-based BOPIS, or BOPIS based on SKU-based inventory, has a lot of extra labor costs. You have people chasing around looking for things that aren't there. You have no ability to actually find the item using technology. There's a higher percentage cancel rate, and you're missing sales because you don't know there are items there that you could actually fulfill. And all of these are causing significant problems, especially in today's environment where retailers are stretching their staff in stores to be able to do a lot more, including all of this buy online, pick up in store, curbside, et cetera. So what we're seeing is are a growing number of retailers that are leveraging item-level RFID to increase their inventory accuracy and basically build a new BOPIS model, which is what we're calling BOPIS 2.0. It's operational today, and again, it's going to be based on the results that we've seen to date and what we see in the near future. The adoption of item-level RFID to support different omni-channel models is going to be the way of the future. And while our item-level RFID had a really strong value proposition before, that's just nothing but increased since we've gone to these new omni-channel models based on stores closing and all of the different models that a consumer wants to pick up and buy product. So I'm going to go through an illustration of what we're seeing today. So this is how most retailers view their inventory. They view that they've got a style, size, color mix, and they believe that their enterprise system is what they're basing all their decisions on. And because of that, they don't have another way of thinking about it. They did a physical count 6 months ago. That physical count was put in inventory. They then received product. In most retailers, they're doing an assumed receipt based on what the warehouse said they shipped, et cetera. And what we're finding is that this is what reality looks like, okay? And again, during a pilot, this is how we quantify what the real situation is in a retail store. Think of it as if you went into a doctor and you had an MRI done. The MRI was not going to fix anything. The MRI was basically to identify what the problem was. Well, that's exactly what a pilot does. A pilot goes in, and actually we can use the pilot as a measurement tool to identify what the real problems are in inventory inside a retail chain. And you can see here the actuality of a retail store is you have items that you think you have 2 of the gray shirts in the medium, and the reality is you only have 1. The reality is you think you only have 2 green T-shirts of the medium, but you actually have 3, and also the same for black T-shirts in medium. And the worst situation is that you're out of stock of an entire size and color, and you don't know it because you think it's there because of distortion in your inventory. So let's dive into that a little bit further. So again, you take that example that comes out. This is what the problem, how the problem is exhibited. The ERP, there are 3 categories of errors inside a retailer that we found during our projects. The first one is understatement of inventory, which means you have more units than you think you do. The average that we see in retailers is greater than 12% for this segment, and this error, if you will. So the green boxes around the items represent this. You actually have 3 of the blue small T-shirts. You think you only have 2. The problem with this is that this is a perpetual overstock situation. The other problem with this is related to BOPIS is that this is a third T-shirt that you could expose to an online order that you don't know is even there, so you don't know that you can expose it, especially if you have a threshold of in this case, let's assume your threshold was you were not going to offer this for buy online, pick up in store if you had less than 3 of these in the store. So what that means is that somebody who comes in to buy this small T-shirt in blue, you would not expose that for BOPIS at this time. Okay. The next error is overstatement of the ERP, which means you have fewer units than you think you do. And this is the situation where the red boxes are involved. And this is pervasive as well. It's greater than 15% of the cases that we've studied across the thousands and thousands of stores and the dozens of pilots. And again, both of these situations come out of problems associated with that physical count and also with the receiving process in the store. And it just cascades over time. And again, the problem here is that you have perpetual shortages and you have canceled orders once you've placed BOPIS orders for the store or click and collect. And so in both of the overstatement and the understatement situations, you're disappointing customers. You're either not exposing the inventory to satisfy the order, or you are canceling the order after you've told the individual that they can come into the store and buy it. And the third is the worst of all situations, which is that you have a frozen inventory, which is a subset of overstatement. This is where you think you have units, but you don't have any, and these are the gray boxes. So you never sell them, so you never replenish, and so you cancel orders because you actually think you have items and you don't have anything there, and you're completely out of stock. And these three represent for BOPIS a very, very difficult situation, both operationally and financially inside a retailer. You can see the frozen inventory component we see is around 8%, a little bit over 8% across the case studies that we've done for retailers. You can't, and the bottom line is you can't run an effective BOPIS process or click and collect process with this type of a problem. And this is, again, I want to restate that this is not something that we've seen in one or two retailers. You can see in the next slide. So basically, these are just a sampling of the retailers that we've worked with in pilots. And across the bottom axis is the number of items in the store, and the vertical axis is the inventory accuracy. And the orange dots that you see there in the middle is where their inventory accuracy is with their ERP system. The blue dots is where they got to with RFID, and the delta between those two represent the overstatement and understatement of inventory down at the bottom in the yellow and the gray. And what this means is that lots of problem with executing BOPIS because your uncertainty is so large, and it's usually worse than normal because the items that tend to have the biggest inventory distortion tend to be the most popular items in the store as well through the studies that we've done. The next is there's quite a bit of dialogue in retail today about big data or digital transformation and making big investments in those areas. And I would state that what we've seen is a lot of that is wasted money because the inventory distortion is so far off to begin with, as far as it comes to sales and product merchandising in a store. It never ceases to amaze me the amount of money going into basically work on big data, and when we share with them that their inventory accuracy is less than 70%, the challenge that they feel internally for now getting this problem fixed first and then moving toward some type of a big data or AI-based system, because both AI and big data have challenges when the data itself is wrong. And lastly, there tends to be quite a bit of shock when the retailers really get a chance to compare a physical count and a PI count at the item level with what the RFID counts can provide. And in many cases, they're just eliminating the physical PI counts through either using barcode scanning handhelds that they rent or whether it's a service from a third party. But, you think about it from a philosophical standpoint. If you establish inventory on June 1st and your distortion is a number of percentage points every week after that, the value of that at the count level might be useful, but that's not going to help you establish your inventory for sales and meeting orders for customers. And that's why the PI counts are going away in many of the cases that we're involved in, where retailers are just using the RFID counts at the end of the year for their balance sheet. So let's talk a little bit more about the case studies and things we found. There are two major reasons for components that are driving this inventory accuracy problem. I just mentioned one, which was the annual PI count, physical, using barcode scanning and usually a third party. The second is probably a larger problem, and that is the receiving errors. It averages plus or minus 2%. We've seen it as high as plus 7% and minus 7%. But the problem with this is on every shipment. And so if your starting point is 8% off and then every week you're varying 2% plus and minus at this, down to the SKU level, then what ends up happening is you have this significant compounding of inventory distortion over time. And that's why you get to somewhere around 30 to 40% inventory distortion as you get ready to do another PI. We have done detailed level cases where we've done PI counts and RFID counts simultaneously to show the results and with our customers, and very consistent behavior that we've seen. It's very difficult for someone with the barcode scanner to scan every item on a deep rack or on a stack. It's just human behavior, especially for minimum wage people, that they are not necessarily going through the kind of diligence that's needed to get you to 100% at the item level. And what we mean at the item level is that every SKU count is correct, not just the total number of items in a store. So how is the technology item-level RFID being used today with retailers? First off, focus on a business case and proven technology. This is the problem is an inventory accuracy problem. It's not a loss prevention problem. It's not a customer experience problem. The problem is your inventory accuracy, so focus on that. The retailers that are leveraging the technology for BOPIS effectively are doing frequent RFID handheld stock counts. Usually that means somewhere between once a week, or we have some that are doing it multiple times a week. But most on the average, it's once a week for a stock count. And what that does is that self-corrects. So the next bullet talks about the better receiving process, that being able to receive in a closed box environment, which means you can read through the box. You read to almost 100% accuracy. Usually you might have one or two tags in a box of 1,000 that are shadowed. But, basically you're at 99.8%. Well, those two tags that were shadowed are likely going to get picked up during a stock count. And that's what we mean by self-correcting, where in the non-item level RFID world, there is no way to self-correct that. And so your problem just gets distorted over time and compounds over time, as we mentioned above. And then lastly, they're using the high inventory accuracy to drive their picks, and then they're using the RFID capability with non-line of sight to basically enable BOPIS and buy online, ship from store picking in stores today. So, this is the problem that is in front of us, and it's relatively straightforward on how to address it. It's not a new technology anymore, and so let's talk about that. Imagine in the customers that have rolled out, our case studies show that they can get back to this nice view of inventory that is orderly, that is accurate, by basically doing a few things. The first thing that they can do is once they implement item-level RFID and source tagging and weekly handheld counts, is they can move to a pull model for their replenishment to their store. And when they move to that pull model, they have confidence that it takes a while for the supply chain organization to get their head wrapped around being able to trust the inventory in the store and trust that against them, what's missing, to be able to move to a pull model. But once they do that, they can rapidly start seeing their inventory and be inventory in a way where they can have enhanced and confident BOPIS. What that means is they get their inventory up to 98%. Their sales floor availability gets above 95. They increase their sales greater than 3% for both in-store and BOPIS. Their BOPIS order cancellations, drop by greater than 15%. And their efficiency of labor goes up by 20% because you're not sending people on wild goose chases. And then lastly is your BOPIS customer satisfaction has gone up by 30%. So relatively straightforward. And what that looks like in a real system is a Microsoft Azure-based application, hosting environment that we use on Clarity on a handheld, potentially use fixed readers if needed for use cases, and then we have RFID tags that have been source tagged. We can also do on-prem if we need to, and then there's a lot of discussion around integration with these ERP systems and the complexity therein. The reality is that it is not that difficult. It's not nearly as difficult as some people make it out. The technology to do integrations from system to system has evolved dramatically in the last 10 years, and it enables us to be able to rapidly move in, and with our team and the team of the retailer, be able to build those integrations to create value as we deploy. Clarity has a number of different features. I've highlighted the key ones that we typically see in the deployment cases that we've been part of. Stock count receiving is by far the top two. But then you can move to an intelligent BOPIS picking, and then we use Power BI as our BI environment, but we also provide data warehouse services to our client, and then they have their own BI environment as they move forward. So, ultimately what happens in a rollout is we move to a place where we see significant value in an ROI. When it all comes down to it, this all gets down to, am I able to sell more product? Am I able to be more efficient with my inventory? And what's needed to make that happen, okay? The technology itself is proven now. As we've shown you, as I showed you on the first slide, we have thousands of stores. We managed over 20 billion transactions last year on Clarity in retail. We produced over 2 billion tags. There's been discussion in the past about how hard is it to get a supplier to tag product. The reality is most of the suppliers that are source tagging today for retailers and brands don't even know they're putting an RFID tag on the product. They know they're putting a price ticket on the product. They don't even know that there's an RFID tag in there because it's been printed and encoded and delivered to the client. So the friction to adopt has dropped by orders of magnitude over the last 10 years, and that's why we're seeing adoption increase, as well as the fact that just the problem of BOPIS and the problem of being more lean in your supply chain is driving significant adoption in the marketplace today. So what do we see in 2021 and beyond for BOPIS? Every one of our Clarity retail customers is moving to a deeper integration with their order management system. They realize that they have an order management system at the SKU level, and they want to leverage Clarity's ability at the execution level to support picking in the store. The next is that they're moving item level RFID upstream for BOPIS benefits. So for example, if I'm going to improve my inventory accuracy in the store, I'd also like to improve my inventory accuracy in my distribution center. Knowing what I'm receiving from the vendors is probably going to be the first place, and it is what we recommend as the first place to address in the store itself. I mentioned the receiving into the store and the issues associated with shipments. While that is a problem that can and has been solved in the distribution center, it's actually less expensive just to readjust the inventory as it's delivered to the store by using item-level RFID to receive rather than to put in a lot of systems in the distribution center. But receiving in the DC is something upstream that we continue to see. Most of the retailers are looking at, who are using BOPIS 1.0 handheld applications, are looking at integrating or replacing those with what we're doing inside Clarity for our enabled picking app. And the reason for that is that the productivity gains that you have by leveraging RFID to help you find and pick the items in the store shows significant operational efficiency improvements, and thus the reason for that change. Most retailers are moving to integrating all their channels. So we have a number of customers who have an online channel and they have a in-store channel, which means they have product in there for their online business, and they have a different or subset or superset of that product for their stores. And we're seeing them integrate those together so that consumers can buy anywhere and return anywhere throughout the process, throughout their sales process. We also are seeing new customers who are moving toward BOPIS as the fundamental reason to move forward. In the last 4 months, we've had 3 project wins that have been customers that have been thinking about BOPIS, but then all of a sudden, now with the current environment of retailing, they've rapidly moved toward that BOPIS is essential and they need to fix that, and they want to fix that by leveraging item-level RFID. And lastly, most retailers are investigating mobile scan and go technology to which is an interesting offshoot of BOPIS 2.0. And so we're going to see continued over time more and more retailers looking at some type of a scan and go technology in their stores and tying that into other workflows that tie to BOPIS through the process. Being able to look on your handheld and see what inventory is in the store, and then rapidly being able to move, you go into a store, maybe even reserve an item and have those items set aside for you for BOPIS or so on. So I think we're going to continue to see consumer level automation as in the buying behavior and buying process for retailers around the store. Okay. And then my last slide is basically how to get started. Again, think about, you want to identify how BOPIS can work for you in an item level journey. We have a lot of different ways for that to happen. One is we perform these live and remote, fully function demonstrations out of our retail ideation spaces around the world. Get into a low-cost pilot to identify and actually measure the problem that you've currently got, and then focus on the business case, source tagging, and integration, implementation, and go live. So, one, I think I hopefully found this useful. We're seeing a growing number of customers that are in that investigation and POC pilot phase. And all of it's to identify how bad is the problem and how can item-level RFID be operationalized to fix it. So, if you want to talk further, this is a way to get a hold of us at info@sml-rfid.com. We'd love to help walk through maybe what in more detail, in not a public forum, some of the details that go behind these numbers and the thousands and thousands of stock counts and the thousands of sites that our team has around the world has gone off and done studies. I will mention that the majority of the market that we see is being of interest is Europe and US headquartered retailers. We've done projects in India, in China. We do have hundreds of stores live in China. But I would say the majority of the business around this omni-channel or BOPIS world is emerging out of North America and Europe at this time. So, Mark, that's my last slide. I'll turn it over to you for questions, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Terrific presentation. Folks, if you have a question, type it into your Q&A tool, and I will present those to Dean. We'll get to as many as we can. So if inventory accuracy is so poor today, how are retailers performing BOPIS?
Yeah, it's brute force. They're putting quite a bit of stress on their organization. They are canceling orders, and they are not accepting orders. So a lot of the retailers will establish a threshold, is what we found. They'll establish a threshold where they won't accept an order unless their system says they have, as in my example earlier, if they don't have 3 items in the store, they won't accept an order for 1. Vice versa, they think they have 3 items, so they accept the order. The reality is they have only 1 item, and or they don't have any in that frozen inventory. And what that does is it puts an enormous amount of pressure on the operational staff in the store. So they're just brute forcing it. I think we've all had the experience, Mark. I know you've written articles. I know we've experienced it in our family, is that we've come to a place where cancellation of orders or things like that are just commonplace. But I think retailers, our experience is retailers want to establish a new quality level in this BOPIS world, and they're striving for that now. But it's brute force is what they're trying to do right now, and I'm not sure it's sustainable. And I think there's been some great. So I just watched a video clip of Tesco's CEO. Talking to the Prime Minister of UK in one of their DCs, and he said that it's not sustainable for them to continue to do BOPIS the way they're doing it today.
Right. Just one quick example. I ordered something that the website said there were 38 in my local store, and a couple hours later I got a call back saying they couldn't find any of them. So that's a pretty big miss. Do you have any RFID solution for cotton bales?
Cotton bale. I mean, that's a supply chain problem. I mean, we don't really care what's in the bale. We've done projects where the product has come in off container in bales of product. So if it's a cotton bale, then it's just putting an RFID tag on it and receiving it through a portal or receiving it with a handheld. So to us, it doesn't matter what the physical configuration is, as long as we match a tag up to it and have a SKU identifier with it so that we can create a SKU and a serial number. That's it's irrelevant. That's why we're able to do, everything from ski boots to lipstick. All of those things just require us to do a good job of the tag specking, if you will, and the placement of the tag. But to us, they're the generic items. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which are the most important topics to include when you're doing a business case?
Number one is inventory accuracy. What are your systems? The delta, as I mentioned on that one slide, the delta between the enterprise system and where RFID can get you is the fundamental issue. And that's why the pilots, my MRI example is that usually we can tell after the first or second stock count what the business case components are going to be. But that's number one. The second is the receiving error. As I mentioned, one of the findings over the last 3 years has been receiving in a store and how the enterprise deals with inventory being transferred from DC to store in the system. So I pack a trailer full of goods, and I'm assuming that all of those, the 13 cages were unloaded at XYZ store. The reality, only 12 of them got unloaded, and of the 12 that got unloaded, what was in them was only about 80% or 90% accurate. that distortion at receiving is also something that we spend a good amount of time during the business case, because both of those identify why you have a problem and how big the problem is today.
Right. Okay. Are retailers able to leverage BOPIS for loss prevention even across multiple channels? I'm not sure if that should be RFID for loss prevention across multiple channels.
Yeah, I mean, the whole loss prevention discussion is everything from returns fraud to folks stealing stuff and walking out the front door. You know, I would tell you that the distortion that's in the receiving side of the business and is also a loss prevention item, because there are items that aren't there. But you know, we're seeing more customers that are interested in putting a data matrix or a 2D barcode, a QR code on the price ticket, and that have the item level information. So at point of sale, you can eliminate the need for an RFID reader at point of sale, but still get the item level data out. Well, that enables us to do things like, we have a returns fraud application that if somebody just grabs 3 shirts off the rack and takes them to a returns desk for return, we can verify through the system that those items have never been sold. So I would say that anything associated with returns is a place where more and more retailers are looking at as a component of loss prevention, and especially with some of the high percentages that we're seeing in certain segments on return products. So the answer, I think the short answer would be, yeah, I definitely think it does. I don't think it's the traditional loss prevention of gates at the front of the store that likely make up the biggest loss prevention component in today's retailers.
Right. Okay. Tagging of the product has always been a hard point for us to get over. What has taken place recently that makes it easier now?
Yeah, I mean, it just that, you know, you look at the technology that we've put in place as an example to develop. You know, today when a price ticket gets developed, for most, if you've never been through that process, there's a product development process where basically we figure out where the barcode goes and what words are on the price ticket and the price file, what logo's on it, what papers it's on. All of that takes place today. The only thing that's different is now what we're doing is we're putting an RFID tag. Let's say it's a price ticket, a hang ticket. We're just adding an RFID tag a step in front of the printing side of the process. And again, as I mentioned, when it gets to the factory in Vietnam, they don't know the difference. They're getting a stack of price tickets. Yesterday, before RFID, they were having to match it up with a 3230 pair of jeans. Today, they have to match it up with a 32 by 30 pair of jeans, and they have to SWIFT it on. So I think the whole concept of source tagging being difficult is overplayed. I think you know, most retailers don't. Most brand owners or factories don't even know the difference of what they're putting on a product today. So, you know, at least the feedback that we're getting, and we're doing this billions of times a year, is that it runs seamlessly from their existing process. It's just a little bit upfront work to get the RFID tag in the tag itself.
Right. What is the penetration of RFID for BOPIS worldwide? How many retailers are doing this worldwide?
If you think of the market itself, is the market for Europe and US we estimate to be about 250,000 stores. And if you assume that the item level RFID market for retail is at around 8% at the store level, roughly, you're basically seeing somewhere in the, you know, you're probably in the 2 to 3% of that 250,000 stores are using this actively today. I don't know what our competitors are doing. I can tell you that we have about 40% market share, and every one of our customers is doing something associated with BOPIS. They're somewhere on the journey to implement BOPIS using RFID, or this BOPIS 2.0 as we call it. So I think the bigger topic is that we're still 92% of the market to penetrate using item level RFID at the store level. I think the tag level is a little bit larger percentage-wise just because some of the very large retailers that have implemented. But at the store level, we've got a long, long way to go.
Okay. How do you tackle source tagging for retailers that have suppliers all around the world? This is mostly the case when it comes to retailers trying to adopt RFID technology for inventory management.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, one of the things that our team was very wise in doing is the tag side of our business made huge investments to have these 24 service bureaus around the world, which meant wherever there was going to be a garment manufactured, we had a service bureau in country. And what that means is that as every retailer and brand owner goes to shorter and shorter cycle times, it means that the orders that the Vietnam factory requires for tags is actually produced in Vietnam and then just trucked over. And so that's a decision that was made very wisely by our management team years ago, and it's paying off significantly because of our ability to service customers in every country where garments are made today.
How long does it take to do a stock count of a store with, say, 40,000 items?
Yeah, so great question. If you assume that the average is somewhere about 15,000 items per hour per store, per handheld. And so in a 40,000 store, it'll probably take you about an hour and 15 minutes with 2 handhelds. And that's a rough number. It's a little different. The bulk of the time is not the reading. It's the walking around and getting to the, you can get to about 92% in probably the first 50 minutes. And then the last 25 minutes is basically getting you to 98%, roughly. But it's a reasonable metric to use today. The technology that we're using in the handheld's a little slower in Europe because they have a different frequency, and it's a little faster in the United States and other parts of the world where we're using a different spectrum and power level on the handheld. But, the handhelds that we're using today, I showed pictures of the Zebra RFD 8500. It's best in class as far as its speed. But that's a rough metric. It's somewhere around 15,000 units an hour per handheld.
How does that compare to barcodes?
It's about, not just our studies, but other people's studies have shown that's about at least 20x faster. I would tell you it's probably, to do a quality job at 98%, it's probably 40x faster to get to the same level of accuracy. And that's why it's not being done with barcodes today other than once a year. Right.
How does BOPIS 2.0 picking work in stores that are using RFID?
Yeah, so great question. So an order management system, let's say Mark is ordering something and he wants to pick it up at a local store. He would work on the order management system on the website of the retailer. That order management system would look into clarity and say, do I have the item at the store that Mark wants to come pick it up at? If the answer is yes, then they would tell Mark, yeah, you can go pick it up. And then they would drop an order down onto the Clarity handheld. And the operators would see a task to go pick an order for somebody, in this case, Mark. And we would go pick the 3 things that Mark wanted. The associate would then use the Clarity handheld to go actually find those items, pick those items, communicate back to the OMS that it's been picked so that the order management system could tell Mark that the order is ready. And then those would be packaged up, some type of a label printed, those would be bagged, and those would be set aside for Mark, just like today's process. The difference is really about that looking into an accurate inventory table and being able then to verify with a high level of confidence that if we say for that order to be picked, that order can be picked for Mark in that store. And to be able to help the associate go find those items using RFID as a technology to go find and pick those items today.
Right. So the handheld has a kind of Geiger counter function where as you get closer to the item, it beeps more frequently, a little louder. How do you ensure that you get the right item into the handheld so the associate is looking for, you know, precisely the right item, a 3230 pair of jeans as opposed to a 3236 pair of jeans, for example?
The technology that we've developed makes sure that you're not allowed to pick the item unless it matches up to the order. So, for example, if they tried to pick a 34 by 30, it would not allow the pick to be completed. So there's a quality check there that makes it, the feedback we've gotten from associates is extremely positive about it allows them to go find items and prevents them from making a mistake as well. So there's a quality check in that process.
Right. So the handheld is actually linked up to the order management system, and it's getting directly, this is what was ordered, as opposed to I'm manually entering, hey, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, literally on the handheld, it would be a task to go pick the items. And we're finding that, again, those kind of things are consistent, whether it's replenishment from back to front in our store or whether it's an omni-channel or a BOPIS order. That feature sets inside the application is consistent across the different workflows. So, yeah, the associates get used to executing that way for picking operation. Another example would be transfers. So I need to transfer all these products. This is one of the things that happened after BOPIS. I mean, after COVID, is that there you had a whole bunch of winter clothes in retailers that needed to get picked and moved out of the inventory in the store to go back to the DC. And they used our picking operation to go find every one of those items, put them in a box, and change the status to in transit and get it out of their store inventory. So that whole process of picking is one of the fundamental elements of clarity today.
Right. So related question, how reliable is the data exchange between the handheld used for pick of an order placed online in a store? Is the reference list for the pick using the handheld done almost in real time or downloaded as a reference list for each order for a single day to cater to the day's order? So do you say, hey, here are all the items that we need to pick and then sort them out? This goes to Mark, this one goes to Dean, this one goes to Sue, or it's each order comes in on the handheld. I go pick those 3 or 4 items for Mark's order.
Yeah, I mean, think of it as it's just a work list for the associates, and so they're able to pick something off the work list and go execute it. But it's real time. So literally, if you ordered something for that fictitious store, it would, within a second, it would drop down from the order management system into Clarity as a task to be performed. It would be at the bottom of the list because it's first in, first out, but it would be at the bottom of that list instantaneously to be executed.
Right. Okay. How do you advise store employees to know when they have to pick up all merchandise during an RFID scan, especially if there are thousands of densely packed items?
Yeah. So one, you make sure that your technology's right. You make sure that you've got good tags. You make sure that your tags are placed. Homeware is a notorious problem because of where the tags are being placed on them. And so you basically make sure that your tags are placed right. You make sure that your tags are the right technology, that the inlay's the right size, that it's the right chip. And you make sure that you're using a reader that can support that use case. That's number one. Number two is there are a number of different techniques that we use to show the retail associates when they're finished. And it varies widely depending on what the integrations look like with the enterprise system and what system is the system of record. But needless to say, there is a notification, there is a way of keeping the associate up to speed in real time as to where they're at and when they're finished. And it's for the team, it's not just for an individual. So the entire team knows when things are up to speed. And again, one of the benefits that we have is we've got some really, really smart customers who have helped us develop these operational scenarios in our software that make it so that the concept of team counting being able to have, some of our retailers have 5 handhelds operating in a stock count at one time, reading 200,000 items in a big store. Being able to have those things synced with one another, there's some proprietary technology that we use, is part of the benefits that show up in operational efficiencies as far as the amount of time it helps to reduce the stock count. Our customers have told us that about 15 to 20% improvement in efficiency over some of our competitors, just because of the way we handle communicating the stock count progress, if you will.
Okay. If I order something and pay online while I'm in the store, does the system allow me to pick up my order almost immediately?
Say that again.
So I'm in the store. I order on my phone. I order online. How quickly, is that order communicated to staff to go pick up? Is that depend on the retailer, or is it something built into the Clarity software?
Clarity would treat that like any other order. So it really gets down to what's the operational cadence that the associates have to go pick orders. In reality, it's on the handheld within a second of the order being confirmed by the order management system and being sent down to Clarity. The question is, when is an associate going to be available to go pick the item for you and bring it to the BOPIS desk or the click and collect desk? And so, not really a Clarity feature. That's just something operationally in a retailer.
Right. How do the Clarity solutions address scaling across a retailer's entire chain?
Yeah, I mean, we've got retailers with thousands of stores, and like I said, and we've got retailers who are doing pilots in one store, and it's the same software. Being able to support thousands of stores doing a cycle count at the same time is pretty sporty. But we've got a brilliant team of people that have worked with brilliant customers that have helped us do that. Cloud is by far one of the benefits, and Microsoft Azure enables us to do some things there that help us scale very rapidly. But it's the same, basically, it's the same software. We don't do multi-tenant. We don't believe multi-tenant technology is realistic for supportability of clients. We've got clients that are on, let's call it version 31, and we've got clients that are on version 37 because of things that they want to implement. So trying to make everybody on the same version is just not realistic. But that's one of the benefits we have of going to single tenant, one retailer, one cloud environment, is that enables us to scale quite nicely across their enterprise as we roll out. So it's I would challenge I think I'd put our team's architecture up against anybody's today because of the great examples we have in the marketplace. So.
Okay. You mentioned closed box receiving. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So when boxes come into retailers today, they either open up and go through every single item and barcode scan them, or maybe they just assumed receipt by the enterprise system. So literally, as boxes come into a retailer, whether they're in a cage or whether they're on a pallet or whether they're loose boxes from UPS, you don't have to open the boxes to be able to receive everything. You can read right through them, or you can read right through the totes, or you can read right through, if you pull it off on a garment on hanger rail, you can read everything. And so what that enables us to do is rapidly get the inventory into the store and being able to know what are those items. We can even alert people, associates, as to there are items that we just received in one of these boxes that needs to be moved to the sales floor because you're out of stock. So the technology is that good now. So.
Right. Okay. So last question. How does item-level RFID reduce inventory, and do you have any examples?
Yeah, so the best example is Tesco F&F. 2016, in their annual report presentation, their CEO, Dave Lewis, basically came out and said that they took 10% of inventory out of their F&F clothing brand. And we've seen that because we know how many tags they buy. And what ends up happening is you realize you just have excessive inventory in your store. And we saw this at American Apparel. We've seen this at every single retailer in the second year. In the second year, they are taking inventory out of their supply chain because they realize they just have too much once they have an accurate view of what they have. I would also mention that when you start looking at sustainability and how sustainability is impacted by different things, just that example of Tesco F&F eliminated 20 million units of inventory. That makes 500 shipping containers that never had to be made and never had to be shipped. So there's a significant sustainability component that's not talked about very much by using item-level RFID and getting your inventory more accurate. But that's how inventory is being reduced. It's just a lean principle model.
Okay, we got time for one more quick question. How fast is the RFID-driven BOPIS industry growing? Is there more growth expected this year or in 2021 when retailers have a better financial position? Based
on the experience we have, is that BOPIS is the #1 item that customers are looking at. We call it a burning platform. It's the thing that's causing them to jump and adopt item-level RFID. And every single customer that has awarded us a contract in the last 5 months, that is #1 on their list. Every one of our customers that we had previous to this is their #1 ad that they want into the application. Every single customer that's an inquiry, this is their topic that they're talking about. They have to move to using their stores for retail replenishment. So I don't know what the growth rate is. I can tell you that the percentage of interest is at 100% based on what we're seeing in the marketplace today.
Right. Okay. Dean, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Folks, just a reminder that we'll send you an email tomorrow with a link to the presentation and the recording. And you can also go to RFIDjournal.com. If you click on Tools and Resources, you'll find recordings of this event as well as previous events. We also have another webinar coming up December 3rd, how to implement smarter medical applications with RFID and RTLS. You can register by going to rfidjournal.com/events. Before I let you go, I want to thank our sponsor, SML, for sponsoring this event. I want to thank Dean for a great presentation. And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. I hope to see you at future online and face-to-face events. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.